Good evening and welcome to Access and Empowering South African Special Broadcast brought to you by the Eastern Cape Department of Government Communication and Information System. I'm your host, Jessica Bobo. Tonight could be one of the most important conversations we will have all year. Gender-based violence and femicide is a widespread problem in the Eastern Cape and is deeply entrenched in institutions and cultures, and also traditions and rather communities. In an effort to address the scourge affecting women and children, GCIS creates platforms for public education and information sharing to create awareness to empower women. These they do in form of malls and taxi activations, community dialogue, and radio and TV panel discussions. This evening, the focus is on Nelson Mandela Bay, a metro with a high crime rate. Now, as we in Human Rights Month, various stakeholders, including the municipality, community safety, the business sector, and non-profit organizations have been invited tonight to share their role in protecting women and children's human rights. To begin our discussion, I'm now joined in studio by our first guest, Mr. Tembani Gqiba from the NGO DOXA, to look at the complex and deeply rooted nature of gender-based violence and femicide in Nelson Mandela Bay. Mr. Gqiba, good evening and welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jessica.
Well, Mr. Gqiba, it's been 30 years since the advent of freedom as well as democracy in South Africa, yet women still suffer gender-based violence. Can you tell us about your organization as well as its missions to try and fight gender-based violence?
Thank you so much once again for the invitation. Yes, DOXA is the name of our organization. DOXA Family Care. Basically, our organization focuses more on family preservation. But in preserving the family, it's very important for us to make sure what destroys those families. It's very important to know what brings these social ills, because broken families results in broken society. So our society is broken because families are broken. So hence the establishment of DOXA. So that's where gender-based violence comes in, because that's when most gender-based violence happens. Because as the statistics say, that most people who are abused, most victims are being victimized by people whom they know, which is those are family members, and those are the people who live within the household. Hence, there is a high rise of domestic violence in the country. So yeah, DOXA basically, that is our mission, to make sure we preserve the family by educating people about what gender-based violence is, and also by assisting the victims of gender-based violence. And we also specialize in positive masculinity programs where we empower men, because we cannot talk about gender-based violence by focusing on victims only. Someone must be able to focus on the perpetrators. Who are the perpetrators? It's men. But these men, they were once boys. So hence our program focuses on mentorship programs for boys, and also focuses on men as well. We've got a men's shelter. Now, one will ask, why do you have a men's shelter where it's women who are victimized? Now, our contribution as an organization was saying that stats show that most men who are perpetrators were once victims. So when men are being bullied, where do they go to get help? When men are being victimized by other men, because there is male against male violence, so where do men go for therapy so that they can stop being perpetrators of GBVF against women? So that's what our men's shelter do. We offer therapy services for men, psychosocial support. We shelter for them for up to 3 months, where they'll be able to go back to their homes, and where they'll be able to treat their families with respect and care, and not repeat what was being done to them.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gqiba. What educational programs does your organization have in place to teach young people about GBV, consent and healthy relationships?
Yeah, we've got mentorship programs where we focus on adolescent girls, women, and young people. Those AGYW clubs are based in schools, where we empower young women and on sexual reproduction health and rights, and where we empower young women on sexual and gender-based violence, And also we've got programs that focuses on boys, where we say that we need to be able to teach boys where they are still young about sexual and gender-based violence. So we do that in a form of a football academy. Because if you take girls, they love to talk to each other and have those conversations. But with boys, it's different. We cannot call boys so that they can talk to each other. Boys love to play. So hence we decided now intervention for boys, it has to be different than girls. Girls love to talk, but boys love to play. So how do we reach out to boys? It's through soccer. So we've got Doxa Football Academy. We've got 3 divisions, under 13, under 15, and under 17. And also we've got human rights clubs in schools around the metro, where we recruit 20 young people each school, and we empower them with human rights. And then those 20 kids, they make sure they educate their peers about those rights, whether it's GBV, substance abuse, or child abuse. And then also we've got a program that we've just started now. It's a support group program for young women. It's called Stepping Stones, where we gather women who've been victims of gender-based violence. They talk about their journey. They talk about their experiences with abuse and domestic violence. But the beauty about that program, we say now that you have walked this journey, look around your community. Do you see any opportunities? And then how can you benefit from the community? Because at the end of the day, women, they stay in relationships because they are jobless, because they depend on a man. So that program says that, how can we empower you so that we cannot depend on the perpetrator? Let's see around the community, what is it that you can do that can empower you so that you can be able to make income for yourselves and not depend on the perpetrator. Yeah.
Well, Mr. Gaba, speaking of the programs that you are creating, there's still many women who don't report such cases of gender-based violence because of fear of police inaction or more persecution from the perpetrator. Now, how can you advise the women in that position?
Yeah, you know, the challenge with that, most of the time, it's hearsay. We always encourage people, go to the police station yourself, because people, they will say that, no, the police won't do anything about my case. And then when you ask them, did you go? No, but so and so didn't go. You know, so it's always a hearsay. People, they don't go because of the stories they hear. So we are saying to people that, you know, the law is for us. The law is not against us. So we cannot conclude that the police are not doing anything based on one person's experience. So because the police now have been empowered, we've got victim-friendly services in some police stations, some they don't have. We've got police now who specialize, who are trained by government, who specialize on domestic violence and GBV, who are based in this police station. But now, if your neighbor went to the wrong police station, they don't have the victim-friendly, and then that neighbor said that I didn't get help. But we cannot conclude based on what your neighbor said. So we encourage people, go there yourself. And we've got Tutuzela centers now. You don't have to go to the police station. Go to Tutuzela. You'll find subs there. You'll find a social worker. You'll find a healthcare worker. So we encourage women, talk. If you don't talk, and we will continue to suffer.
Well, Mr. Koba, thank you so much for your time.
All right.
Well, we will have to leave it there. And now let's go to that short break. But after that, we will continue with this discussion. Welcome back to Access and Empowering South Africans, brought to you by the Eastern Cape Department of Government Communication and Information System. Gender-based violence and femicide is a serious problem in South Africa and requires a multi-sectoral approach to tackle this deeply rooted societal issue. The Nelson Mandela Bay municipality has partnered with law enforcement to combat gender-based violence and femicide and other crimes affecting the Bay. To continue our discussion, we are now joined by Major General Voisile Ngata, SAPS's District Commissioner, and Mr. Zugile Mangangaza from the Department of Community and Safety. General, as well as Mr. Mangangaza, welcome and thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, firstly, Major General, to you, last year we did witness various stakeholders led by the police minister signing the pledge in the fight against a crime in the metro. Now, General, how important is this support to the police in fighting gender-based violence and femicide and crime in the Bay?
Very important, especially in the district such as ours, because we are an economic hub, meaning that everyone is here because they are attracted by the fact that there's employment, businesses, etc. So it does help us because now it means they augment our resources. And of course, it means that we are too many now, at least to fight the scourge of crime in the Nelson Mandela Bay. It does help in many ways.
Well, thank you so much, General. Now to you, Mr. Mangagaza. How important is citizen support in groups like Community Police Forum in the fight against crime in the Bay?
Very important. Communities are very crucial in the fight against crime. As a department, we encourage communities to play a role and have an active role in the fight against crime. Even our vision spells out that we need a safer Eastern Cape with active and cohesive citizenry. So it's very important that we have our community members joining CBF structures, working with the police in their communities in the fight against crime.
Thank you so much. Well, General, we have just heard how important it is for the citizens to give support in fighting fighting the crime. Now, are you worried about the communities that protect suspects, and what is your call to the residents to stop that matter?
Yeah, it does worry us. And not only protecting them, sometimes they even go as far as taking law into their own hands. We always encourage and demotivate those who want to protect the criminals. Why do they protect the criminals? It is simply because the criminals threaten them. And because they're vulnerable at times, they don't have trust and hope that other people, the government can protect them. But it does worry us. But, you know, we've rolled out many social crime prevention programs, you know, with the view and the intention to encourage and regain the confidence and the trust from our communities. Others have done well, and we've done well in other areas where we have noticed that there are more community members who are reporting crimes, including giving us information that is crucial in order to effect arrest or to prosecute those who are committing crimes.
Thank you so much, General. Mr. Mangagaza, as Mr. General Ngata is saying that it is very important for community to be educational about these things. Now, surely your department does run crime awareness programs. Now, how do communities respond to these programs? Do you think, is it creating any difference at this moment?
Yes, we run social crime prevention programs, as Major General Ngata has explained. We invite different stakeholders when we do this. We worked particularly with the community police forums of these police stations, inviting communities to be part of this, because we understand that it is very important that communities are part of this, and they need to be aware of the issues that actually they encounter in those communities. So social crime prevention programs, they are there to educate communities against crime. They are there to make communities aware. They're also there to motivate communities to really, take an active role in the fight against crime. So those social crime prevention programs that we conduct are very important in our communities. So yeah, we will definitely intensify as we move forward. Yeah.
Thank you so much. General, recently we have seen the statistics in the metro, and the murder rate has decreased significantly, which is very good news. Is this success due to the new operational police strategy?
Yeah, of course. But even though there may be a reduction somewhere or at some stations, every murder is important. We are still having people who are killed in the metro. But of course, there are so many things that we are also doing. Remember, the cooperation agreement encouraged the police to work with the city law enforcement. So that is why now they join us during the operations. We address the crime generators such as the drugs, and such as also the ship-ins. And also we have managed to recover many firearms Money firearms, and you know, every firearm that you take from a suspect or for a criminals, you know, we are preventing 1 or 2 or more murders, you know, from occurring. And so there's a lot of things that we have been doing, and together with the city, and we are so grateful, you know, for the cooperation agreement that was signed.
Well, again to you, Major General, if you can just tell us more on when you discover these firearms and when you discover all these things that are used just to make the crime go further, what happens to those that are being taken?
Yeah, some of them, we managed to prosecute them successfully. Others, we were unable to do that. Remember, you know, we've got the section 35 of the Constitution, and it does, of course, protect the rights of those who are accused, who are detained, who are arrested. And I want to say that we sometimes do find it difficult, you know, to secure successful prosecution, but we do arrest them and we do profile them, and many of them are in jail as we're talking now, and more are going to go to jail and serve their time there.
Well, to you, Mr. Mangangaza, as well as to you, General Ngata, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
We are going to have to leave it there and take a short break, but when we return, we will take a look at the Thuthuzela Care Center and the importance of having a one-stop shop for survivors in combating gender-based violence in the metro. Please do stay tuned. Welcome back to Access and Empowering South Africans, brought to you by the Eastern Cape Department of Government Communication and Information System. The Thuthuzela Care Center in Gqeberha is a one-stop center for survivors of gender-based violence. It offers medical, legal and psychosocial support, and it is a critical part of South Africa's anti-rape strategy. With me now in studio, I'm joined by Zimkita Bula, site manager of the Thuthuzela Care Center at Doranginza Hospital. Zimkita, good evening, and well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Zimkita, why is it so important that a gender-based violence survivor have all the facilities like medical, legal and counseling be available to her in one place?
Well, GBV survivors are people who've gone through tremendous trauma, and it's very important for us to pull together to be able to support them so that all of the services that they need are available in one place. And these Thuthuzela Care Centers were established to deal with exactly that, because in the past, people used to be sent from pillar to post, attended at the police station in one place, seen by a doctor in another place. And this made a lot of people to lose faith in the justice system. So with the introduction of the Thuthuzela Care Centers, all of the service providers that are together in providing services to rape survivors are taken and put in one place. And these one-stop facilities have been designed as a critical part of South Africa's anti-rape strategy, so that we can reduce the secondary victimization that clients encounter at police stations when they're trying to open cases of rape, and also in places such as hospitals, because some patients were seen in casualty units and they were, you know, they had to disclose what they were for in front of other patients. So having these one-stop centers and having all of these service providers in one place reduce the secondary victimization that they experienced after opening cases.
Well, Zimkita, can you tell us more on how does the organization collaborate with law enforcement, and who are other stakeholders that you're working with?
Okay. The Thuthuzela Care Center is led by the National Prosecuting Authority's Sexual Offences and Community Affairs Unit, and it is a partnership with various departments and donors, and it's a response to the urgent need for management and integrated strategy for prevention and management response to rape survivors. So Thuthuzela Care Centers are those one-stop facilities, and we are a critical part of the anti-rape strategy. We work with a specialized unit of the SAPS, which is South African Police Services. That specialized unit is the Family Violence and Child Protection Unit. Where you open a case at the police station, your investigating officer comes from another unit of the SAPS. And it's a department that has specialized detectives that will run with your case after you've opened it, and also gather enough evidence to support the allegation. We are also working with the Department of Health. The Department of Health is responsible for collection of evidence. And apart from collection of evidence, they provide clinical assistance to survivors of rape. And they are also sometimes made to go to court as expert witnesses, because they are the ones that collect the evidence from our clients. The NPA, as the leading partner of this organization, has specialist prosecutors that guide the investigation. They are the ones that look into the winnability of the case. And every case, when it's opened, the docket is first reviewed by a prosecutor so that we can ensure that it's court ready. So that when you open this case, it has weight and it can at least have a fighting chance in court. And lastly, we work with the Department of Social Development as well, because as you've said earlier, our services are medical, legal, and psychosocial. So our psychosocial service partner is the Department of Social Development. They are the guys that look into the social aspects of our client and what has happened to them. So if there's a need for counseling, they are the ones that will champion that. And also civil society organizations that we work with. In Gqeberha, we're working with Rape Crisis. They are the ones that started the process before it was the Thuthuzela Center.
Well, thank you so much, Zimkita. If you can just tell us more on perhaps what other challenges does your organization face, especially in fighting gender-based violence, and perhaps how would you want to be helped in it?
Okay. So coordinating the stakeholders is sometimes has its own challenges, but we have mechanisms in place, like we have protocols. We also have local forums and provincial and national forums that inform how we are supposed to work with each other as interdepartmental teams. So our services are multidisciplinary in nature, so sometimes it becomes difficult to focus on what we are there for, but those forums and those protocols help us to keep to the main objective. We want our victim to be the main subject in service provision, and because GBV cases are ever increasing. So a lot of work still needs to be done to eradicate the scourge of GBV and to make our communities a safer place to live in.
All right. Thank you so much. Speaking of wanting to make our community a safer place to live in, well, do you think it's crucial for GBVF awareness campaigns to be aimed at men and boys?
Okay. I think that it's very important for these campaigns to be aimed at men and boys. There is a common misconception that gender-based violence mainly affects women, but our stats show otherwise. And maybe it would help if potential victims, if our efforts were focused on the men. But a lot of the time, when our men and boys are victims, they become ashamed to report these incidents. So what happens is that they end up not reporting, and apart from not reporting, they end up perpetrating the crimes, especially when they're younger, because they think that it's what they're supposed to be doing. So this happens a lot if they don't get the psychosocial assistance that is rendered to survivors of rape. So if we can focus our awareness raising initiatives, we can encourage men and boys to speak out about rape first of all, so that they can seek help and also report these incidents when they are affected. The reality is the majority of the perpetrators are men, but there are a lot of cases where the men and boys are survivors. So where they've been subjected to sexual gender-based violence, and it cuts across all ages. It's not just your young boys, it's also your young men. So a lot of the time it's our young boys that are raped and they end up perpetrating the crimes. So they perpetrate these crimes because when they don't get the psychosocial assistance that they need, they end up thinking it should be happening to them. So they are raped and the incidents remain largely unreported, further making the problems even bigger, you see.
Well, Zimkita, thank you so much. Just before I let you go, what should a survivor do? Well, if he or she has been assaulted, can you just please take us through the steps that she must take, or she or he must take to be able to be helped?
Okay. The first and most important thing to note is that rape can happen to anyone. It can happen to you regardless of your gender. It can happen regardless of your religious affiliation. So no one asked to be raped. So the first thing that a rape survivor must do is to, we ask our patients that you can report a case directly to the police station, or you can report to our Thuthuzela Care Center. There are a lot of instances where you find that people are sent away from police stations because they are outside of the jurisdiction of the incident. That should not be happening. If you are sent away from a police station, you can come directly to a Thuthuzela and we'll assist you. So you can report a case directly to us, and there are currently 62 Thuthuzela Care Centers nationwide. So at any of those 62 Thuthuzela Care Centers, you can be assisted, and they are located in hospitals and readily available to assist survivors of gender-based violence. Ideally, cases are to be reported to the police stations, but there are instances where people are mistreated. You can come directly to a Thuthuzela Care Center, and what we'll do is we'll facilitate the process if you are interested in opening a case. There are incidents where clients say that they don't want to open a case, they're not ready. They are interested in other service offerings like psychosocial assistance or just the clinical treatment. we offer that as well. We don't turn victims away. That's one of our core functions. So the second thing that we ask our patients to do is, if it's within a 72-hour period, please don't wash. You must come directly to a Thuthuzela Care Center so that we can collect the evidence that will help your case to have a little bit of weight in court. The other thing that we ask our patients to do is they should not be deterred by the length of time that has passed since the incident. Say, for example, your incident happened 5 years ago. You can still open a case of rape. You can still be brought to a Thuthuzela to get a forensic examination, and you can still get a chance in court. So the first and most important thing is to report. You must report to a police station, you must report to your nearest Thuthuzela Care Center, regardless of whether you want to proceed with the case or not. And we also want to say that our staff will assist you to get immediate medical attention at the center. You'll be seen by a clinician to attend to any physical injuries that you may have, and that you've sustained as a result of the assault. We will also arrange counseling services because, as we've mentioned earlier, our services are medical, legal, and psychosocial. Lastly, we'll help you to open a case if you are interested in opening a case. We don't turn victims away. You don't have to open a case if you don't want to, but you will get all of the services and you will not be turned away. Lastly, you can come to a Thuthuzela Care Center and you can get information about your case at any point in time. The progression of the case is information that will be freely provided to you at the Thuthuzela Care Center.
Unfortunately, we have run out of time, but thank you so much for this fruitful information.
Thank you.
Now, unfortunately, we have run out of time. Now, when we return, we will be shifting focus to women empowerment and closing the gap in the business. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Access and Empowering South Africans, a special broadcast brought to you by the Eastern Cape Department of Government Communication and Information System. South Africa is leading the G20 and has prioritized focusing on women's advancement, including addressing gender-based violence and femicide. GCIS is coordinating the government's response to gender-based violence by hosting discussions like the one we are having tonight. No single entity can end GBVF alone, and the private sector plays an essential role in supporting local government to combat gender-based violence and femicide in society. I'm now in studio joined by Ronnie Nwati, Professor of Economics at NMU. Professor, thank you so much and welcome.
Thank you so much.
Well, Professor, as you know that the first G20 Employment Working Group meeting was held right here in Gqeberha and focusing on labor and employment issues. Now, one of the top priorities of the meeting was to discuss gender equality and closing the pay gap, tackling job segregation and boosting women's participation in science, technology, as well as engineering fields. Now, Professor, do you think meetings like this will create awareness to close the pay gap for women in the private sector?
Yes, indeed, they will. We need more meetings like that, more platforms where these things are discussed rather than to be kept in silence. Because one of the important things when you develop an economy, it is to ensure that you reduce the inequality gap, you reduce poverty gap, and also, more importantly, you transform the economy. So without that transformation, we cannot talk about development. Many times we are misled to talk too much about economic growth, forgetting that there are certain things that are kind of shortcomings in economic growth alone, because that economic growth means how much you have generated within that year in South Africa. So the division of that income is very important to consider. And also to translate that growth into development. So one of the manifestations of development is to ensure that we transform the society. It is very sad, 30 years to democracy, that we still find pay gap between male and female. And I say this by virtue of the fact that if you look into labor force participation rate, you'll find that there's more men that are participating in the labor force than women. A couple of years ago, we asked ourselves a question to say, why is it that now that there are more opportunities for women that's open, yet if you look at statistics, you'll find that the labor force participation for women is still low. And it could be that because of the wage gap between male and female, and which must be addressed. And there must be transparency when it comes to wage bill in terms of that distribution of income. to ensure that the companies and firms are accountable to meet the agenda of the national priority, the national agenda, to close that gap. But because there's no transparency, one doesn't know really to say, has that gap been narrowed down or is it widening? So we need to look at various reasons to say why is there low participation of women in the labor force. And I think the pay is one of those things. I therefore think that meetings as G20, which is had recently, is one of the effort and a step towards addressing this. And those meetings were quite effective because we had various speakers from various countries and all saying the same thing. And I hope and I trust that the resolutions taken there and those findings reported, the recommendations, will find their way to policy.
Well, Professor, speaking of the effectiveness of such meetings to be held, what do you think it means to South Africa to host G20?
It means a lot. It means that South Africa is part of the global player. We are a growing economy. We are a developing economy. I'm happy that we do not sit and then feel sorry for ourselves, but we are out there with the big giants in the economy. Those guys, those countries, the G20, they have very high GDP. And there's no point for us to sit back and complain and say, oh, we're a small country, we're a developing country. We are playing part in the global space. And also, it is a platform where we can make our voice heard. And therefore, when they make global policies, we are considered as well as South Africa. I think it's very important for us to be part of that G20. And I think it helps as well to share our problems and also get ideas from the G20 countries as to how they overcome these challenges.
Well, Professor, let's now try to narrow it down to Nelson Mandela Bay. How did the business sector in the Nelson Mandela Bay benefit from the meetings that were held in G20?
You know, when you have meetings like this, G20, or you have a pool of international players in the city, definitely it's going to have economic impact. Why? Because it boosts the tourism sector. These people use our hotels, our B&B, guest houses, and not only that, they also buy some of the goods from our Gqeberha city and they take it away back to their countries. So definitely, I think to me it was an opportunity for businesses to really have made their gain because of the foreign nationals that were in the city. And it was an opportunity, in fact, for businesses to market themselves, to and inform the people that we are here and these are the services that we are providing. So I think, not having any evidence in terms of figures, but in my opinion, definitely it has had a very good impact in this economy in the metro.
Well, Professor, one of the most key priorities meetings held in the G20 was the Employment Working Group. Now, youth unemployment was another key priority here. And do you think this meeting will bring new solutions to tackle the unemployment rate in the metro?
Yeah, youth unemployment is a worry. It's a worry here and in other countries as well, that the bulk of the young people, more than 50% of them are unemployed, whereas they are holding degrees and skills, and those skills are not benefiting society in any way because they go into unemployment. We have to ask ourselves a question. As one of the ways to address this, one, are the skills that we produce in line with what the market demands? That's one part of the question. The second one is there appetite to employ? People talk about, oh, well, they want experience and so on. Besides that, did we create enough appetite to employ? How do we do that? We do that by assisting the employers, by ensuring that we add the infrastructure, ensuring that we invite more investors to come in and plow their money to create those jobs. Without investment that are flowing here, it's not going to work. And also, it started at the municipal level with those kind of concessions for those firms to come and run their businesses on our grounds through tax and rates, concessions, to make sure that we retain them here. That's the only way, not just in the city of Gqeberha, but in the province as well, to make sure that we pull those investments here. So it's important that a platform like G20 Working Group, it was important because we could present our results and we could present our findings in terms of the plight of the young people that are unemployed. And of course, the recommendations we brought in our papers, I'm sure they will find their way to policymakers who will then translate those things into actionable policies.
Well, Professor, just before I can be able to let you go, I know that you already touched on this one, but I would like us to now go in depth. Well, there were a lot of international officials who attended the G20 meeting and will continue to attend such meetings in future. Now, Professor, do you think these meetings will strengthen the tourism sector's contribution to economic growth and job creation in the metro?
Certainly. You know, the tourism sector at the moment is one of the sectors that are still labor intensive. Remember that South Africa has got a very high level of labor available and willing to work, but they're unemployed. As much as we go into digitalization, digital economy, but the tourism sector for me for a long time is going to remain labor intensive. You need people. So I think that definitely the tourism sector will definitely benefit. Whenever you have international guests coming to visit, you know, so your transport sector is going to gain through the multiplier effect. You know, your transport sector, your B&Bs, your guest houses, your hotels, your shoppings around, your restaurants, right? All of them are set to gain 1 cent or 2 cent gain in their profits because of this in undertaking like these. Functions and events usually lead themselves to high demand, which then will definitely yield higher profits for the businesses.
Well, Professor, thank you so much for your time. We have to leave it there.
Thank you.
Now, as we have to leave it there, it's now time to go to the short break. We will return once again with more on this important discussion. Please do stay tuned. Welcome back to Access, an empowering South African special broadcast brought to you by the Eastern Cape Department of Government, Communication and Information System. Joining us now in studio is Ms. Siphokazi Ngombane, the Director for Tourism in Nelson Mandela Bay Metro. She is here to continue our discussion on the G20 meetings being held in Gqeberha and whether they will contribute to the economic growth of the Metro. Siphokazi, good evening and thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening, Jess, and thank you for having me and the municipality, and also give good evening to your viewers as well.
Well, thank you so much. Well, Siphokazi, we know that the first G20 Employment Working Group meeting was held here in Gqeberha, and of course focusing on labor and employment issues. Now, how did the business sector in Nelson Mandela Bay benefit from this G20 meeting? Do you think it will strengthen the tourism sector in the Bay?
Just let's have this conversation. Just to take you back, the G20, they usually say it's the next 2010. Having such a caliber of event happening in the metro, having over 20 countries within the same metro, the local Nelson Mandela that they call it. The business sector did benefit when we hosted our first meeting with Dell, which it happened in 18 to 21 of Feb, a few weeks from backwards. And our local businesses, such as the transport business sector, such as the hospitality accommodation sector at large, your malls, your restaurants, you're looking into your crafters, local crafters. It also spills over to our businesses within township, because they also had an exploration and explore what we can showcase as Nelson Mandela Bay in terms of our township tourism products.
Well, Ms. Ngombane, the G20 Employment Working Group brought a few officials from all around the world to Nelson Mandela Bay. Did this visit bring a much-needed economic boost and create more jobs?
Yes, it did, especially into the hospitality and tourism sector. Now, the products within Nelson Mandela was exposed to the international market and client as well. Because definitely, if I make an example, someone from Russia coming here not understanding what we have, what facilities we have, will be able now to advocate to bring some more conferences into our city. So it did quite a lot of leverages from especially the accommodation sector. We had over 250 people or delegates within our city, looking at 150 international, national, which is 100. And all those people needed accommodation for a longer time, the organizing team, the technical team, you name it. So it did give a boost, especially also to the Eastern Cape. Everything that was procured by Dell, it was done locally. So you look into the printers, the companies that are doing printing, that were working together with Dell, they were able to leverage out of it. If you look into the transport facilities that people need to move from the airport to the venue and around, they were also able to take part into that. During the conference and the meetings, we have crafters. Crafters were able to sell to the international delegation. So there was a boost in all levels. Not only that, we had performing arts that were performing for those international guests. So there's a lot of spin that was happening in terms of economic movement around the G20, and more to come.
Well, thank you so much. Are there any local development programs that the Metro is implementing this current financial year?
Quite a few. I'll just name few from the department that I'm coming from, which is economic development, tourism, agriculture. We've got a section called sector development. Within that, there's informal trading, where then we're able to assist informal traders. The word called onobalat, the women that are selling fruit and selling veggies on the street. So we're running a program there where we're assisting them with support in terms of buying equipment, technology, and etc. Remember, as much as I'm selling potatoes, Sipokas is coming with a card. Everything happens with the phone, everything happens with the card. So we're busy helping them to facilitate and getting them equipment, structures, and etc. So there's a lot. Also, we are focusing on safety. So we've got youth that we have brought in as Nelson Mandela for tour ambassadors. So in terms of visualability and make sure that our tourists, when they land into our city, we're able to give them proper tour, we're able to guide them, and we keep them safe. So there's quite a few projects to develop youth, normal, and the residents at large within Nelson Mandela Bay.
Well, Spokas, speaking of that, unemployment is another key priority area at the Employment Working Group. Now, do you think this meeting will bring new solutions to tackle the unemployment rate in the Nelson Mandela Bay Metro?
With the theme that the G20 is talking about, sustainability, equality, and Dell was focusing critical into employment. Youth employment became one of the topics where they look into policies that were developed. So with all those skills and policies that were developed by government, it will assist our youth in terms of job creation. And then also it will filter down into the rest of the spheres of government, including the private sector, because then there'll be regulations. So the meeting actually will definitely help in terms of reducing, if I can call it that way, or better word, reducing the unemployment rate. But there's a lot that was from the skills transformation will also be tackled, because remember, we have other countries that are maybe far ahead from us as South Africa. Now we're having them on board. They'll be able to tell us what is working for them, how it has involved in decreasing the youth unemployment in their countries.
Well, Spokas, just before I let you go, are there any other G20 meetings planned for the Metro?
Can I whisper to you?
Yeah.
Many of those that are coming within this beautiful city of Nelson Mandela Bay. The next one that is coming from the 7th to the 11th of April. It's digital, is the Department of Communication and Digital Technology. It's a 5-day conference, also will be held at the Boardwalk. So more is coming. We've got one in July. We've got one in October, big one in October from the GCIS. So where we'll look into investment, trade, and how we can build and how we can attract investors into the city.
Thank you so much for this fruitful information.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Have a wonderful evening.
We need to leave it there. Thank you so much to Ms. Ngombane and all our guests for participating in this critical discussion this evening. As Nelson Mandela Bay gears up to host the National Human Rights Day event in Kariga, the 21st of March reminds residents about the sacrifices that accompanied the attainment of democracy in this country and the importance of protecting the rights of all. My name is Jessica Bobo, and this was Access and Empowering South Africans, brought to you by the Eastern Cape Department of Government Communication and Information System. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care.